Welcome back. So, as I try to navigate this so that I'm not going to get into the division again that might end up having changes between now and, well, there's two divisions that may end up having changes. The Canadian division won't change. So I thought, all right, which Canadian team do I want to start off with? I'm going to start off with Toronto. Normally, Toronto, because I go in alphabetical order through previews, normally Toronto is near the end of any kind of preview, Vancouver and Winnipeg as well. So if you're a Canuck fan and a Jet fan, good news, you guys won't be last this time around, or near the end this time around. It looks like the divisions that are still kind of up in the air, I may wait on those. We'll see when we get confirmation about who's playing where. And Toronto's an interesting place to start, because you're not going to get many more varying opinions than you will about the Toronto Maple Leafs. And whether or not they're contenders, and do they qualify as contenders? They haven't won a round in the last while, and so does that hurt their status? And yes, on some level it does, because they didn't do it against Columbus this past summer/fall. They didn't get it done the seasons before against Boston twice, and of course against Washington the year before that. So this is a team that needs to win in the playoffs. The regular season, it doesn't matter. However, the regular season, there's been some erosion of the record as well. 2017-2018, they had 105 points. 2018-2019, 100 points. And prorated out, this season they would have had 95. So this is a team that has been shedding points every year. And the record's been dropping. And so I think there should be some concern. And yet, I think Kyle Dubas did his best in the offseason to revamp things. So out of the lineup, you got Barry's gone. We knew he was going to go. Kapanen and Johnsson, those are cap casualties. Those are guys that they just, for cap reasons, decided to move on from. And they did replace them well. I'm not going to lie. Not going to make it up that they didn't replace them well. CC, of course, his contract, I don't think Leaf fans are that upset. Cody Cece's not coming back. Frederick Gauthier, Kyle Clifford. With Clifford out, they went out and got some more truculence, as Brian Burke would call it, and all that other wonderful stuff. Oh, and just for the point of order as well, if you look at this Toronto jersey that I'm wearing, and this, of course, is their logo from 1967 when they last won the Cup, the N is lowercase on this one, too, because I know when the reverse retro came out, people were like, look at that N's lowercase. Yeah, the N's lowercase, and the M in Maple Leaf is also lowercase. It's not a big deal. It's not something new. It's a throwback. So you can't do a throwback and change it, because then it's not a throwback. But anyways, it's one of those things that's been going through my head for over a month now. So with those players out, the Hockey News has them on their power ranking at 9th overall in the NHL. Sports Forecaster had them finishing first in the Atlantic. And that, of course, is the Atlantic, which has Boston in it and Tampa in it. And they're saying Toronto could have been the best team. I have them finishing first in the Canadian division. Not by a lot. And I think the Canadian divisions could be very, very competitive. And when we get into looking at their divisional opponents, I think Toronto has a lot to prove in this situation. Now, when I get into the players that I thought their stats were too low last season, I went with something different, because most Maple Leafs performed pretty well. I do think Marner's going to produce better than he did this year. I think his points per game is going to go up. But I don't know how much, and it's not like he had an anemic total. So we'll look at two others instead. Freddie Anderson had a 909 save percentage. That's too low for Freddie. I think Freddie should be 915 or higher. I know Freddie Anderson takes a lot of flack, because if you're Toronto's goaltender, you will be probably the most scrutinized player in the NHL. Going to be up there. And I know there's other Maple Leafs who may be in that same category, but I've watched many a goaltender in Toronto go through that level of scrutiny. And I think Anderson's a solid goaltender. So I think his numbers are going to get better. And then while I was at it, I thought, well, why not mention Joey Anderson, who comes over from New Jersey, in the Johnsson deal. 18 games, 4 goals, 2 assists, 6 points. Clearly, in picking up Anderson and the things they've said, Joey's going to have a chance to make this roster and play night in and night out. And he has enough talent that I think he can score at a better rate than he did for New Jersey, where he had the 6 points in 18 games. I think he can be a 40-point guy at some point. Whether it's this year or not, I don't know. But 6 points in 18 games, probably a bit lower than what we'd see out of him this year. The rookie to watch is clearly Nick Robertson. When you've got a team that's got as much cap invested in 4 players as Toronto does, having a player come in on an entry-level contract who's able to produce is huge. That can make all the difference in the world. It really can. So Nick Robertson, if he's able to step in and play even say top 6 minutes, let's say pushes his way into the top 2 lines and forces some kind of reshuffling in the lineup, that could be fantastic for Toronto. A lot of heart with that kid and a lot of raw talent, and it's a matter of being able to focus that. And so we'll see what he does. Their goals for last year, 3.39 per game, which was 3rd. Goals against, 3.17, which is 26th. And again, and I know Leaf fans get tired of hearing about their blue line. Our blue line is fine. The problem is the numbers don't say that it is. Power play, 23.08%, which was 6th in the NHL. Their penalty kill, 77.72%, which is 21st. So both the penalty kill and the goals against are not good enough. And so there was kind of a revamping of the blue line that was done in the offseason. As much as you can with limited cap space. Now up front, they added Joe Thornton. Joe Thornton should add some leadership to this team as well. And for somebody who wants to say, well, I thought that's why they have Matthews and Tavares. You can't have too much leadership on the team. You can have too many egos on a team, but egos and leadership aren't necessarily the same thing. There are players in the NHL who are great leaders and also have some humility in their game as well. And I think Thornton has that. There were times when he was younger where I thought Thornton might be a bit brash and maybe a bit cocky. I don't get that impression from him now. TJ Brody on the blue line is a solid addition from Calgary. And we'll see how that goes. And then I wanted to mention Aaron Dell. So they pick up Aaron Dell, whose numbers in San Jose last year, not bad. They were better than the numbers put up by Martin Jones. Now, with 3 goaltenders, this of course is for Seattle purposes. You pick up Dell, potentially, but you have 3 goaltenders. So it may end up being brilliant to have 3 goaltenders, considering the protocols we're going to have this year, and we may end up carrying 3 goaltenders on a roster anyways, so you don't have to worry about losing one on waivers. But still, in all likelihood, only 2 of them are going to see the ice, and you have to wonder if either Campbell or Anderson or Dell, one of the 3, ends up being moved during the season to get help somewhere else. So we'll see what Toronto does. And again, I know they picked up Dell in part looking at the Seattle expansion, but things can change during a season, and we'll see if maybe one of them gets moved. Their core 6, and this is where it gets interesting. So I have Matthews and Marner in the core 6, and people will point out the fact that Marner and Matthews both have contracts that take them to UFA status, and are they going to stay in Toronto? I'm not worried about that. They are the core for Toronto right now. I put Tavares in the core rather than Nylander. I know Tavares is older than the guys I'm listing for core players on other teams, but with that contract, he has to be seen as a core player. On the blue line, Riley and Sandin. Sandin could be that ace in the hole for their blue line. I was really impressed with Rasmus Sandin last year, and I think with the right amount of ice time and trust from a coach, I think Sandin could maybe help to transform that blue line, make it better. That's really the key thing this year is bolstering that blue line. So you're not 26th in goals against, you're not 21st on the penalty kill, because the offense has been there, and it's been a matter of the defense. And yes, the goaltending numbers need to get better as well. Those definitely are they influence one another. And then I have Freddie Anderson as being part of the core 6 because I don't qualify Campbell or Dell as a future starter in Toronto. So I'll go ahead and have Anderson there. Whether or not Anderson's still there past this season remains to be seen. Unrestricted free agent, all that other wonderful stuff. And he's going to want some money. Now, their coach, Sheldon Keefe, this is his first chance to have a full season as the Leafs coach. That can only be good for him. Good for the Leafs as well. When he took over from Mike Babcock, there was a rebound by the Leafs. They had been kind of mired in the muck with Babcock. It was a joyless bench, and as soon as Sheldon Keefe takes over, that joy seemed to be back. They were enjoying the game. By the time we reached the end of that series against Columbus, however, that joy seemed to be gone again. And so I think the Leafs are a team that confidence makes an absolutely huge difference. And this is a year where Matthews, Marner, Tavares, those 3, and I know Nylander takes a lot of flack, but in reality, Matthews, Marner, Tavares is where their offense, that's what their offense rotates around more, I think, than Nylander. Compared to like Besser in Vancouver, It's great to have Besser, and he's a good goal scorer, but he's not one of the core guys. That would be Horvat and Pettersson, So Matthews, Marner, and Tavares, we'll see how well they play this year, because that's going to decide the fate of both the coach and I think the general manager. Kyle Dubas, rightfully so, has been criticized for some of the contracts, but he also deserves credit for some of the free agent signings he's done as well. I think that Toronto has improved their team, their depth up front. I think their blue line has the potential to be improved as well. So this erosion we've seen in the regular season points, and again, it's projected points, this year it should be projected to be a little bit higher. I believe that. I think things are going to get better for Toronto. Now, if you're a glass half full person for Toronto, they have the skilled forwards. And they added guys for cheap. And the fact that he added guys for cheap means that in future seasons, it's possible Dubas will be able to do this again. We've got a flat cap, so he may need to work that magic again as soon as next offseason, where he needs to bring guys in for less than $1 million a year in order to keep this team afloat and keep it as a playoff team and potentially as a contender, right? That helps. To me, the glass half empty side of this is simple. They're kind of in cup or bust territory, right? So let's say Toronto wins the Canadian division. They're number one. And then in the first round, they play Winnipeg. Winnipeg takes them out in 6. You're going to hear tons of complaints about how they're not good enough and they're never going to be good enough. And so that's a problem. But let's say they beat Winnipeg in the first round. And then they play Calgary in the second round. Calgary takes them out in the second round in 7. Not good enough. So let's say they beat Winnipeg and then they beat Calgary and they go on to the conference final. And then they lose a conference final against Tampa in 6. Not good enough. And the argument then would be the only reason they got to the conference finals because they were playing other Canadian teams. Once they played an American market, they were done. In regular playoffs, it wouldn't have mattered. Or let's say they beat Tampa. They go to the Stanley Cup final. The argument would be, well, they had an easier time getting there. Basically, if you're a naysayer for Toronto, the only thing that would stop the naysaying this year with the divisions being realigned would be if they actually win the Stanley Cup. And even then, the argument's going to be they can only win the Cup because this weird pandemic thing that shortened the season. I remember 2012, 2013, an argument being the Leafs made the playoffs because it was a shortened season. If the season had been 82 games, they wouldn't have been in the playoffs in the first place. And whether that's valid or it's not valid, it's out there. So to me, the fact that it's cup or bust puts a lot of pressure on these guys. And it's not entirely fair. It's not entirely fair that you either win the cup or you're a failure. I don't view things that way when it comes to professional sports. You have one champion out of 31 teams, soon to be 32. There are plenty of really good teams that should be proud of themselves that don't necessarily win the Stanley Cup at the end of the year. The next big hype, and I know we're going to start hearing this pretty quick, maybe as soon as the World Juniors is done or during it. So while Nick Robertson is getting all the attention now, Rhodium Amirov from the Russians, who was a surprise pick to some, and I was kind of expecting a defenseman in that spot too. But Amirov looks like he could be a steal. And so the hype, that could really build up during the World Juniors if he has a good tournament. If he has a bad tournament, then it goes the other way, right? That's the Leafs bust. He's a bust. I always laugh at how guys are a bust before they've played a game in the NHL. And they're 18 or 19 years of age, and they're already, that guy's a bust. 19 years of age. Anyways, in his case, 18. This season was there were some mediocre months. October, they were 6-5-3. November, they were 7-6-1. So the first 2 months of the season, things weren't great for Toronto. December, they got a lot better, 9-3-1. January, 5-3-2. February, 8-6-1. And then they only won 1 out of 4 going into the break. They were 1-2-1 in March at the time of the pause. And of course, one of the things I've missed this year, we're up to December 11th. I haven't had a single fight with Toronto yet about moving Toronto up or moving them down in the power rankings during a regular season. This is kind of weird. Usually by now, there's been at least 2 or 3 major arguments with the Maple Leafs fan base. And as much as they may miss it, I kind of do too. Because it's kind of a regular thing. Wherever I put them on the board, it's like, they're not going to like this, even if it's number one. They're not going to like it because they're going to say, "We're not number one. Why are you just putting us there just to build us up so you can knock us down next week?" I admire that. Anyways, how they performed against the teams in their own division last year is interesting. Because again, most Canadian teams aren't in their own division. It's a limited sample size, but when you add it all up, it's interesting. 0-1-1 against Calgary, 1-1 against Edmonton, 0-1-2 against Montreal. Those games were all close. 3-0 against Ottawa. So they like playing Ottawa. Ottawa's going to be more difficult this year. They were 2-0 against Vancouver, of course. 1-0-1 versus Winnipeg. And their total record against their division, their Canadian division last year, 7-3-4. So they won 7 out of 14 games. It'll be interesting to see how it goes for them this year. So this is a reason why, while I do see them as potentially being first place team, and they should be, I think, in Canada, there's no reason to think that it'll necessarily be easy. Again, I think that the split between first and sixth in the Canadian division might be 8 points. I think they're going to be close. And if Ottawa has the kind of bounce back that they want to, first to seventh could be 12 points. We could see the division relatively tight. And since every single game would be a divisional matchup and a rivalry game, I think the winners are going to be us as fans. But there you go. Toronto Maple Leafs. What do you guys think in the comment section below? Let me know. Are they on their way back up? Are they going to get back to like projected to 105 points kind of season? Or does that erosion, does that potentially continue? Let me know your thoughts. Do they win a round this year? And again, is it Stanley Cup or bust? I think it is. But let me know your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for watching. And do hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through just happened upon this video. I'll talk to you again soon.